you're not happy with the way things are going, then do something about it. Absolutely. Don't keep complaining, because you are going to be the future of emergency nurses. Do something about it. And it's very disheartening that a lot of them, will complain, and they'll say, well, it's because these people have been nurses for forever. And yes, they have, and they have a lot of experience and a lot to offer, but so do you. So join, do something, and that's the culture shift that hopefully I'm trying to change with a lot of people that I meet, trying to.
Hello, and welcome to the Art of Emergency Nursing podcast. This is where we share stories for inspiration, entertainment, and encouragement, because we all know emergency nurses have the best stories. Now here's your host, Kevin McFarland.
Hey everybody, Kevin McFarland here from the Art of Emergency Nursing, and thanks for listening to the podcast. I appreciate you being here as always. Don't forget, I always have to remind you, leave a rating and review. That's what helps our show get noticed by other people, and that's what's going to help people like you discover this show. And you want them to discover the show because you think it's awesome, and they will think it's awesome too. So make sure you leave a rating and review if you haven't done so already. I have a great episode planned for you today. Have you ever noticed how social media will suggest people that maybe you should be friends with? And typically they're friends of friends, or people who kind of run in the same circles. Maybe they do the same thing. Maybe they know a lot of the same people. Well, my guest today kept showing up on my suggestions for people that I might know. And then I realized that I didn't know her. And then a couple friends had also mentioned this person's name to me, of somebody that I should know or somebody that I need to talk to at some point, suggested her as somebody that might be interesting to have on the podcast. Well, then another friend, completely separate from emergency nursing, just happened to mention, hey, by chance, do you know this woman who's an ER nurse who is now living in New Mexico? And he's like, oh, she would be amazing. You have to meet her. And sure enough, this person was actually working at the hospital where I used to work in New Mexico. And I realized, okay, that was fate just saying, I need to get this woman on the podcast and meet her and talk to her. So that's exactly what I did. My guest today is a longtime ER nurse. She's been a school nurse, a flight nurse. She's done a ton in nursing. She's been all over the country, not only as a travel nurse, but as a DMAT nurse as well. This woman is absolutely amazing. You are going to enjoy this episode with my new friend, Jamla.
Hello.
Hey there, how are you? Oh, you froze up. There you go.
Hello.
Hi there, how are you?
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you. And happy Memorial Day.
Yes. Thanks for everyone who, Memorial Day, obviously, about those who have passed away, but we thank all of our servicemen and women. Absolutely.
Of course. Can you hear me okay? I was kind of playing with my microphone a little bit today.
Nope, I hear you fine.
Perfect. How are you?
I'm always good.
It's so nice to meet you.
Virtually, right?
That's right. And then we'll do it again in person in Orlando, right?
Can't wait. Very much looking forward to that.
It's going to be so much fun.
Give me both.
I cannot wait.
Me neither. So. The conferences are always great, but this is just, especially because we didn't have one obviously last year. I mean, virtually it was great, but just to have it in person is just going to be a breath of fresh air, especially after COVID and everything that's happened this past year. I
agree. I think everyone's going to go a little nuts. I think everyone's going to be super happy to be there. I think the numbers will be through the roof.
Can't wait.
It's going to be exciting. I'm really excited.
I'm still looking forward to it.
I'm really looking forward to being there. It's going to be so much fun. So, but how are you liking New Mexico?
So it's great. It's just totally different. I've been as far up as Alaska and as far obviously down as Texas, but New Mexico is different. And I think it's just a breath of fresh air, literally, compared to, this past year and working in busy cities. So this is very nice.
It's not bad. It's kind of a small town.
Yeah.
It's kind of a small town. Everything's super easy to get to, which is really nice. That's what we miss about it here in Houston.
Oh, I bet.
Good for you.
COVID.
No COVID.
This past year, obviously everybody's seen the effects of COVID, but it's interesting because in the small towns, we kind of just ignore the fact that they're small. And so, when they have 100 people, for example, that have COVID, we don't take into consideration that 100 people in a small town is a very significant number. Yeah. I mean, compared to if I told you, I'm in New York and, we had 100 patients that were COVID, you'd be like, okay, Jamla, 100, when you consider the size of New York, yes, it's significant, but not as much as those small towns,
Yeah.
So
yeah, they
unfortunately
they got hit pretty good. Like, whew, I was like, wow. The last time I was there, I went in and I was visiting, and no one even knew I was in New Mexico. I was there for a funeral. And I go walking in, and I sat down and I was talking to some of the clerks in the front, and Chris LeCount, who's one of the day charge nurses, comes walking by, and he looks like this and he does a double take. And he's like, "What are you doing here?" And he goes, "We just got done saying that this feels like a McFarland day." They're like, "This is so bad. It feels like a McFarland day." He goes, "We just said that in the trauma room." And I was like, "Oh, really?" He goes, You gotta come say hi. So I was like, okay.
Because no one would believe him unless you walked in and they're like, "Where'd he come from?"
Exactly. Because they were like, he goes, "We just said this felt like a McFarland day." And I was like, okay, that's funny. So I walked back there.
That is really funny.
I walked back there and I was like, "Did somebody call my name?" And they're like, "What is happening? Oh my God, this is crazy." And
you're like a ghost,
right? They're like, "We didn't even know you were in town." And I was like, no, I was kind of came in kind of quiet. But it was like, it was just,
you're like, "I heard my name and I came in."
I heard my name and I disappear like the devil. Right. So, and they were like,
"Oh, that is funny."
What a it was just hilarious. And they were just getting killed. They were just getting beat up. And I was like, and they were like, "Okay, you need to leave and let's see if this all goes away." So I was like, "Well,
take your curse with you."
Your curse. I was really like the worst shit magnet there. Like,
oh my gosh. Well, maybe it's just you.
Yeah, maybe it was me.
Maybe.
And then when I started in Houston, I was at the first place I went to. They're like, "Oh, it's so busy today now. It's so busy." And I was like, "That's really weird. It's weird.
I don't know what's going on." Well, we do want our volumes to come back, right? Post-COVID. Right. So maybe you should just go hospital.
Maybe I should just go spend some time in the ER, every ER. And
that's what you need to do.
Bump up the numbers.
I'm going to start contacting all my people and be like, "Hey, are your volumes up to where they were pre-COVID?" Right. They're not. Hold on, I got a guy.
We got a guy. We'll send him to you.
I got a guy.
That's funny. So where are you originally from?
That's a loaded question. So it's funny because I grew up on the East Coast in New York, but very few people know that I was actually born in Odessa, Texas.
No kidding.
So when I tell people that, they're like, "Hold on a second, Jamla. You don't sound like a New Yorker and you don't have an accent for Texas." So I don't know. I don't know what to tell people. But yeah.
Sound more New York than Texas, but
very much more New York than Texas. That's where I get my fast talk from. I learned how to tone it down a little for the Midwest and the West Coast.
It's probably good. They probably appreciate that.
Yes. I mean, I thought I was decent compared to some other states on the East Coast, but yeah.
Oh,
but yeah, I'm a New Yorker. I'm a New Yorker at heart. I lived in upstate New York for a long time. Love it.
Nice.
I am the true person that says, hey, there is a upstate New York and a city. There's a state and a city because people don't know the difference.
I got the opportunity. I got the opportunity to do some teaching at West Point.
Oh yeah.
So I had the opportunity to go up to upstate New York and be in that kind of area where it was like I was like, this is not what I think of when I think of New York.
Correct. Yeah.
So it was awesome. Now I did go down to the city while I was there because I was like, well,
you're here, of course.
So, yeah. And I'd been before. We, my wife and I spent about a week in the city, which was amazing and cool and awesome. But I was like, I could never live here. Like this just wouldn't.
So I was actually in the city prior to coming here. And as much as I miss it, I have tons of friends in the city as well. As much as I miss it, I really just, enjoyed going home in 10, 15 minutes from work and not being stuck in traffic for 2 hours. And that's not an exaggeration, Kevin. Like that's the truth, That's
crazy.
I mean, I love the diversity, the food, the culture, the atmosphere, but I don't know. I'm kind of a country girl at heart too. I need like a good mix,
Anyways, we went there and we were like, the idea of not having a car and getting around everywhere on subway and the amount of walking we did a lot of walking. Oh, yeah. God, it was fun, but it was I think it was the coldest I've ever been for one. Really? And two, I was just like, the size of the apartment that we were in, we rented an apartment because it was cheaper than a hotel.
Oh yeah.
And it was a great studio apartment, but I was like, I couldn't imagine like if we lived here, like I just like this wouldn't. Like this would be it's too small. Like it's so small compared to what we were used to.
Correct.
In New Mexico, everything's spread out. Like everything, you get a house and you got maybe a little yard, little neighborhood, and in New York, everything was just right there.
No, I agree. I like my space. And it's really funny because I really am a minimalist. So I really don't have a lot of stuff. And I'm just so used to kind of just living in hotels. But then when I finally am at a place and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can, close a door to a bedroom and have a living room and put my feet up and not, be so cramped. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. So it was kind of cool. It was one of those things that I really appreciated. And I was like, this is really cool. And it was a great experience, but probably not for me. And then we were in upstate New York and I was like, no, this is okay. Like this would be fine.
Yeah, it's beautiful up there. I mean, you've got your seasons, you've got all four. You're so close to the city. You're so close to Canada if you want to go up there. It's just, it really is beautiful. Yeah, really is.
Cool place. Is that where you started working as a nurse?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. So I started there and then I stayed in New York for about 6 or 7 years, about 6 years after I graduated from nursing school. And then I started to do everything else that nursing has to offer.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was a flight nurse. I also did a lot of some international work as well. I worked as an educator. I'm a paramedic as well. So I've kind of dibble-dabbled in everything from jail nursing to school nursing. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Emergency nursing has always been my passion and my background. And I've always had one foot in there and, my other foot in a million other things.
That's me too. I mean, I've done, it's kind of funny. Even when I was doing something else. So for a while I was running a transfer center here in Texas. And it's like strictly admin and, suits and ties and, meetings with VPs and all that stuff. And it was good and I liked it, but it was one of those where whenever someone would say, what kind of nurse are you? I'd still always say I'm an ER nurse.
Absolutely.
It's just, the ER was still my heart and still my, I was always looking out for the ER from the transfer center, trying to. But it was, it was always still I was always still an ER nurse.
Always.
And even when I became a house supervisor, and a house supervisor is an ER nurse, it's triage all day long. But even still, people would still say, what kind of nurse are you? And I just instinctively said I was an ER nurse. So.
Yep. I mean, I feel like it's that saying, once you're a Marine, you're always a Marine. Once you're an ER nurse, you're always an ER nurse.
Always an ER. You're absolutely right.
You really are.
It's true.
It's so true.
It doesn't go away. It doesn't shut off.
No. I mean, I know nurses that come to the conferences that don't actively work in an emergency department anymore, but that's where they started their career. And they'll, either work in the ICU or, in another subspecialty. And they'll say, but I'm really an ER nurse at heart.
Yeah.
And that's where they still come. Yeah. It's incredible.
That's exactly it. And that, that's certainly where I am. Now I'm doing education. I'm doing ER education. But it's, I'm still ER.
Always.
It's still, and, I go down to the ER and I'm like, hey, I want to be like, oh, I can help. I can
still do this.
I can do that. So
I still know how.
So you've been a flight nurse. You've been.
I worked in a jail. I also did education. Okay. So I was an educator for a while. I also did school nursing, which is very interesting. I did that in a very big city school. And I will tell you, it was very similar to almost working in the emergency department because, you had your kids who would come in and you have to be astute and figure out, oh, hey, that kid is coming in to the nurse's office, every other day. And then you pick up on the clues that, they're being abused at home or, they're constantly having stomach aches. But why is it really, and I wouldn't have picked up on a lot of these things if I didn't have my ED nurse background, to be completely honest with you.
Absolutely.
And then we also had, compliance issues with medications. We had kids that were from other countries that had come in and, they needed to get their TB medications. And so they would come into the nurse's office and get their medication every day. And it was just, not that I didn't expect it. I guess I just didn't expect that much of a variety of it from being a school nurse. So I did that. Yeah.
So many school nurses, so I had the opportunity, it was a while ago, I had the opportunity to do some teaching for the Albuquerque Public School nurses. I got to go do their big education day. I think 3 years in a row. And I did it the first time and I was like, oh my gosh, it was like a large group. There was probably 100 and something, 200 something. Mostly older, mostly almost retired. With a few exceptions. There's a few exceptions that were younger. And, there were moms that were working at the school where their kids were or whatever.
Of course, yeah.
And in the crowd, I found an ER nurse that I worked with when I was a tech. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then I got to talking to them and they're like, so many of them were like, oh yeah, I'm an old ER nurse. And I was like, and so many of them were ER nurses way back in the day. They're like, yeah, this is great job for, a retiring ER nurse.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that's cool. And then when they, So I ended up going back like 3 years in a row to do their education thing. And one of the last years they said, hey, we have a position open if you're, interested in like this kind of like director level position. And I was like, no, it'd be terrible. I was like, I'd be terrible at that. No, absolutely not. So,
but doesn't it feel cool to be part of like that elite group? Don't you feel like you're part of that elite group of like ED nurses?
Totally.
Do you know what I mean?
Like, yeah, I mean, it's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
It's a big deal. I remember laughing at this one guy so I worked at the VA there in Albuquerque as well. And I was a director at the VA and I had been there for, I don't know, not very long. And this guy comes in and he was doing nurse practitioner clinicals. And I said, so where do you work? He goes, oh, I'm a trauma nurse. I was like, oh, okay. Well, what does that mean? Like, I don't know what that means. He goes, well, I'm a trauma nurse. I'm an ER trauma nurse. I was like, oh, okay. Like I've been an ER nurse forever. I never, ever called myself a trauma nurse. It's just not, I mean, because I do more than just trauma, right? Like so I go, huh, okay. And he goes, yeah, he goes, I work at the university. And I was like, oh, you do?
You're like, oh,
so do I. I did. And I do, but I've never seen you. And he's like, he goes, oh, well, because I work at the West Campus and the Sandoval Hospital. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay. I go, okay, Sandoval. Yeah. I go, fine hospital. But
it's not the trauma center.
Not a trauma center. Knock yourself out.
It's funny that you brought that up because I've had experiences where people will not, like providers, for example, will not, for example, I had a patient the other day who had a arterial bleed. Being an ER nurse, like I've been around the block a long time. I've been doing this a while. If I get nervous, then maybe you should be nervous. But Absolutely. I'm pretty chill. You know what I mean? And he had a beautiful arterial bleed. I mean, his fingers were barely hanging on. It was really interesting. He was jacked. He was stabbed, actually. Anyway, and so I say to the provider, I was like, I think maybe we could go for a tourniquet. And she's like, well, it won't fit. And we just can't do this. And she's very panicky. And so another nurse comes in and says, hey, what can I get you, Jamla? And I was like, well, maybe some more gauze. And the provider's like, I really need, I need something else. And so the nurse goes, well, I'm a trauma nurse. So what can I help you? And the shift just changed. Like the atmosphere changed. And I was kind of insulted. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, what are you not getting from me? Do you know what I mean? It was a very interesting experience. And I'm so glad that you brought that up because I have experienced that a lot at places where people will say, well, I'm a trauma nurse. Okay.
Yeah. You're like, all right, sure. Okay.
Whatever you say, buddy. Whatever you say.
You're like, that's nice.
Okay.
Sure. Okay.
But you didn't know how to put on a tourniquet. All right.
You're like, all right. It's kind of funny. People get a little weird about stuff like that. Like people are like, they're like, they assume you don't know if they don't know you. It's part of it. They assume that you don't know.
I feel like, I've got these certifications. Can I have a lanyard that has all of them on them? Right. Kind of like at the national conference where you have all your badges.
The ribbons.
Yes.
All the ribbons. Yeah, that's right.
Can I have those? I just, I kind of need one maybe for my scarf around my forehead. Wear it as a headband. Yes. Let's work on this. We'll patent pen it.
There you go. Yeah,
there you go. Right. My work here is done. There you go. I'm going to retire on that.
There you go. That's a great idea. It's kind of funny.
It's so true, though. It's so true. Oh man.
So people are kind of silly about stuff like that.
But then you mentioned something as simple as, oh, hey, did you listen to that podcast the other day? Hey, did you see what was in the ENA connection? My mail is a little behind, so it takes there's a month plus delay. And so by the time I get it, I'm super excited about it. And I was like, oh, hey, did you see that article that just came out in the Gen? And they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And I was like, oh, okay. How long have you been a nurse? You're not an ENA member? I mean, they look at me like I'm crazy. And I said, I have no financial gain from any of this. I just think it's really important that people, and they look at you like you're crazy. Well, I've been traveling and, I don't need any of that stuff. Okay.
You're like, all right.
Okay. You do you, boo.
Right? You're like, all right.
Okay.
You're not going to be as up to date as everybody else, but sure.
Or when I leave the journal there, I always leave the ENA connections when I'm done with them, or the Journal of Emergency Nursing. I always leave them wherever I am. And people are like, oh, what's this? And you can see them looking at it and like, oh, this is interesting. But they've never seen it before in their life.
Yeah. Right. I don't know how many times, because I was the state president for, 4 years or 5 years or something like that. And, I would be in and it kind of waxed and waned, but there were times when like I was like one of the only few people actively involved in the whole university system that was actively involved in ENA. And then for a while we UNM kind of took it over. Presbyterian had it like locked for a long time.
Yeah.
We kind of took it over. But when I was leaving, like there was like maybe one other person there that was like an active member. And I was just like, you guys are killing me.
And no offense, this is a big organization. And to your point, I did management at a facility and nobody in the department, I think there was 2 actually. And I was gung-ho on getting everybody to be ENA members. I wanted them to get, become certified. I talked with leadership and I was like, this is my plan. I think that people would be so much more excited about emergency nursing and the care that they give if they knew about these things. And, when I presented it to my staff, I constantly got accused of, well, it's just part of your agenda. And I would say to them, I don't really have an agenda. I've got my master's degrees. I've got my certifications. I am a proud lifetime ENA member. It's what I spent my first nursing check on, actually. No joke. And awesome. It's almost like you have to beg somebody to do it. And I like to think I'm still a younger nurse. And I think for me, I'm just an old at heart, trying to get people involved is just crazy. And nobody, at this one organization that I worked at, nobody was involved. Yeah. And it breaks my heart. It really does.
We had, so when I joined ENA, when I ran for president for the first time, everyone else that was part of the board, everyone else who was an active member was at least 10 years my senior.
Oh yeah.
And they were all older. They were all, and some of them weren't even in the ER anymore. Like our president at the time was risk management. Our vice president, or our secretary was PACU. And like, I was just like, you guys aren't even ER nurses. Like,
and no disrespect, none. It breaks my heart. I'm totally with you. I taught EMS for a while. And I always would say to them, this is why it's so important for you when you bring a patient in to even educate some of the ER nurses on what you do and can't do, because Absolutely. The ED nurses don't honestly know. And, besides the requirement of, your TNCC and maybe your ENPC at some places, they have no idea how to take off a helmet or, why that patient was still on the backboard, or all the studies that say, leaving them on does more harm. Yeah. And it's just... Yeah. We are so connected, but there's such a huge dichotomy. And I wish that more people were involved, or at least members, again, just be members so you get the newsletters so then you'll know what's up and coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the trick though. And this is the thing I think is absolutely the trick. If you can get them to one national conference, you'll get them hooked.
I know.
One national conference, hooked, done.
I agree.
I know that certainly was the case for me. Like I went to my first national conference and I was like, I'm in. Like
I was like a little kid on Christmas. Are you kidding me? I was like so excited.
I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. And you realize that if you go to, you realize what a small world it is. You realize that no matter, and that's one of the things that I always say in this podcast, and I always, it becomes so clear in the podcast is no matter where you are in the world, nursing's nursing.
Oh yeah.
ER nursing's ER nursing. It's all the same. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is the same. And we're, just to go there and to be able to be in a room with, 3,000 people who think and act and are like you. And you're like, okay, this is cool. My heart flutters. I'm always so excited, and I will say, even as a side note, it is such a benefit because I know even just on social media, the people that I've connected with, I've gained things from, and I've met them from, the conference. I have people, I presented at the national conference a couple of years ago, which was a huge honor. Totally on my bucket list, a huge honor. And I will tell you that I actually had people, either send me messages on Facebook or other forms of social media and say, hey, I really liked your presentation. Can you give me information on this? Or one individual in particular messaged me and said, hey, I really liked your presentation. Couldn't we maybe do a presentation together? And so we actually connected just by that. And last year, we actually did it. Well, we put together something for the conference last year, but I was unfortunately deployed. And so I didn't get to present it, but we pre-recorded it. And so it was great because I never would have met her. We never would have made those connections, And it's so awesome. Incredible. When I need an ED nurse for something, I know who to call where. If I need a small town ED nurse, because I want to see what their issues are to see if we're on the same page. I know where they are because they're my brothers and sisters from the conference. Like it really is an incredible opportunity. Absolutely right. There's a young lady that lives in Virginia that is still we still talk to each other. I don't know, not we talk to each other on Facebook frequently, but we talk to each other like on the phone probably once a month or so to just be like, hey, what are you working on this? What are you doing with this? And just kind of brainstorming ideas back and forth. And I'm like, and I've known her for, gosh,
a long time.
10 years, 10 years. From when ENA used to have the listserv.
Oh yeah.
The listserv emails.
Yes.
We worked together on a project from the listservs. From the listserv days. And we're like, how crazy is that?
But that's the beauty of emergency nursing. Like if I want advice on something, or if I am struggling with, passing a certification, for example, I'll put it out there and I'll say, well, tell me what you guys did. I'll put it out on my thing. And then all of a sudden I'm getting, 20, 30 comments. Oh, try this. This is what I used. Oh, do this. This is what I did.
Absolutely right. It's just cool to have such it really is kind of a small world.
It is. So, it's just an elite group. It really is.
and when you think about the number of people who are like actively involved in ENA, it gets even smaller. So, and one of the things that, I remember when the first time we had some of the people from University Hospital go, and I was the president at the time. And I think I'd been to, 4 or 5 conferences by then, was on a national committee, was was super active with ENA. So by the time I go there, they're like, all these people are like, hey, Kevin, how you doing? And I was like, hey, how you doing? Seeing all these people I haven't seen since last conference. And they're like, how do you know all these people? I'm like, just from coming here, just from coming to the conference.
It's so true. It really is.
And just from coming to the conference, and you see the same people year after year, and you find that there's a small group of people who are actively involved in ENA, and they're on the committees, and they get involved with the board, and they interact with the board. And when the board kind of knows who you are and knows, what your interests are and what you do. And I was like, that's kind of cool.
It is cool. It really is. I belong to a federal disaster response team. And I will tell you that I was just deployed somewhere. And then it was one of the conferences like a month or so later. And I was like, wait, didn't I just see? Oh yeah, we were just deployed on the same mission, and it was so cool because it wasn't anybody that was on my team either. This was somebody from Florida. And so what are the odds of that, Yeah. So really the conference is incredible.
So are you part of DMAT?
I am a DMATer.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Byron Pyatt was telling me that.
So funny story. I was just deployed to joint session of Congress. So we were deployed to DC for a short trip. It was like 4 or 5 days. And I was on a different team. So I was on a Michigan team backfilling them. They needed a nurse. So I was backfilling Michigan. And so we get there. And so Michigan is there, but then so is New Mexico. And at that point, I was already coming to New Mexico after this deployment. And so I was like, this is kind of creepy. All the New Mexico people are here. So ironically, Byron and I got to meet him. I introduced myself to him. And he also works here, obviously, at UNM. So it was such a small world that I was coming here anyway, and I just met him magically, What are the odds of that?
So it's kind of funny. So I was talking to Byron the other day because he asked me to post something about DMAT. And I was I'll post that DMAT's hiring.
Wait.
So
oh my gosh, on the DMAT group.
Well, not on the DMAT group, but I posted it in just in Facebook.
Yes, I saw that. And was it you that said the thanks to Byron for this one or something like? Yes, because I ended up copying it and pasting it on my page for people.
That's hilarious.
Shut up. Oh my gosh.
So I was talking to him and I was like, yeah, he goes, one of the things he said, he goes, oh, well, if you ever want to interview someone about DMAT, I'd be happy to interview with you. And I was like, oh, you'd be great.
Oh yeah, he would.
I was like, you'd be fantastic. Because I've known him. I think I taught his EMT intermediate class.
Oh my gosh.
I think it was me and my mentor, I think, taught his EMT intermediate class.
Yeah.
So he goes, do you know Jamla? I was like, no, I don't know her. I go, she keeps coming up as someone I might know on Facebook. And I go, I think a couple of people have mentioned her as someone I should talk to for the podcast. And he's like, oh, she'd be great. And she's got this DMAT experience. She's from New York. She's like, you would really like her. He's like, totally reach out to her.
I hope I'm reaching their level. I hope the hype was worth it. I mean, I don't know. I have a reputation now.
You're doing good. Yeah, you totally.
Man, what else can we talk about? Hold on.
So, but what a small world, right? So I was like, all right, okay. I was like, there you go. It's meant to be.
It is. And it's just so funny because like I said, I didn't know Byron until DMAT. And again, I never knew the whole New Mexico team was going to be, actually, that's not true. Only half of New Mexico's team was supposed to be there. So they ended up splitting the team and it was just meant to be. In addition to that, Byron was also in the same area that I was, because obviously it was a specific mission and we were all in different areas, and a small group of us were together, and magically, again, Byron and I were in the same group.
Fate's a funny thing, right?
It's incredible, man.
Fate's a funny thing. That's cool.
I know.
How funny is that?
It is a small world.
Small world.
Oh,
so
man.
I have stuff like this happen all the time. One of the things I always joke about, there was a guy who applied for a job in New Jersey.
Sure.
He applied for a job in New Jersey, and a woman from New Jersey who now lives in Arizona.
Okay.
She calls me up one day, and I met her through ENA.
Of course.
I don't know how many years ago, a long time ago. And she's I think she works for the military. She's like a military contractor or something like that. And we were talking, and she calls me up and she goes, "Hey, this is totally random." She goes, "You know, I'm from New Jersey." And she goes, "I still have a lot of friends in New Jersey." She's like, "New Jersey thinks that the Southwest is like New Jersey, where New York's just right there. New Jersey's right there. Like everybody knows everybody because you guys all work probably at each other's hospital and gone back and forth." Mm-hmm. She goes, "So they called me to ask me about if I knew this random guy from New Mexico." And she goes, "They're like, well, you're Arizona. It's right next door." And then like right next door, but thousands of miles away, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm like, it's still a long ways away. So she's like, "I know it's totally random. You probably don't know the guy, but I just thought I'd ask." Yeah. Here's his name. And sure enough, I knew him because he was getting involved in New Mexico ENA. So I was like, well, there you go. Yeah, I know this guy. He's great. He's fantastic. He was, he ran the ER down in, I think it was like Deming or something, somewhere in New Mexico. And I was like, and he's fantastic. You guys are going to love him. So she's like, "Oh, well, I'll let him know." Crazy that worked out, but okay. So he gets a job in New Jersey based on a reference from somebody in Arizona, happened to know somebody from New Mexico. And it's like, what a crazy world.
But that's the beauty of emergency nursing.
Emergency nursing.
I had an article that was published in one of the emergency nursing, whether it was ENA Connect, and that had to do when our presentation was at National, but then also in the Journal of Emergency Nursing. And I had people, and again, my mail is a little bit delayed because I travel all the time, and I had somebody actually take a picture of the article and post it on social media and say, "I know you, I can't believe I'm reading this." And it was just so humbling because I didn't even see it yet, How funny. And it was just so incredible that somebody that I don't even talk to anymore. But again, social media obviously is huge, but somebody that I don't even connect with on a daily basis saw my name in something and then posted it. I'm telling you, I don't know why people are not involved in emergency nursing.
I don't get it. I don't understand.
I don't either.
It's just cool. It's just cool what a small nursing world it is.
It is.
And it just makes it fun. And being involved in ENA just makes it even more fun. So.
There's so many opportunities too. You know what I mean? And I always tell people, I say, if you're not happy with the way things are going, then do something about it. Don't keep complaining, because you are going to be the future of emergency nurses. Do something about it. And it's very disheartening, but a lot of them, will complain and they'll say, well, it's because these people have been nurses for forever. And yes, they have, and they have a lot of experience and a lot to offer, but so do you. So do something, and that's the culture shift that hopefully I'm trying to change with a lot of people that I meet, trying to.
Yeah, me too. That's constantly the drum I beat of, get involved, do it, go back. My big things are always go back to school, get involved in a professional organization, and just take good care of people.
Oh yeah. So. It's really funny because at one of my other places when I was in leadership, I literally, no joke, offered to pay for them to be a member. And all they had to do was fill out the form, literally fill out the form. And I actually had a copy of the form. I, printed off a bunch of copies on, for them to be ENA members. And I said, you even get a discount on your classes. Come on, dude. Like, this is like a no-brainer. Come on, Kevin, right? So I even filled out the form and I said, you know what, Kevin, all you have to do is just come to me, write your name on the form that I have for you, and then you'll be all set. And it was like pulling teeth, and I just don't understand.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't understand it at all. Like, I'm always like, why would you not get involved?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, there's no good reason not to. So.
Yeah, no, you're true. It's true.
How long have you been a nurse?
Over 10 years. So I started working in the emergency department I started working in the hospital in very ancillary other roles. So I started out in 2006. And so I did a lot with the emergency department as a patient safety officer. And so at the time, we sat with the patients who are either suicidal, a risk for falls, that kind of thing. And I got to meet some of the nurses, obviously, and have a really good relationship with them. And I wanted to be like them. I looked up to those men and women. I say that I am the nurse that I am today because of the strong women leaders in my life. And I say that not to be sexist because there are incredible male nurses, but the women that I have surrounded myself with have literally pushed me to be where I am today, over 10, 11 years later as an ED nurse, moved my way all the way up, have traveled many different travel assignments, leadership positions all over. I would not have been able to do it if it wasn't for people believing in me and pushing me way back when I wasn't even a nurse yet.
That's cool. That's awesome.
I mean, my mentor, one of my mentors, God bless her, Ryan, has unfortunately passed away since, but she kept saying, Jamla, you should go back to school for this. And, she would always say when we taught ENPC and TNCC together, she would always say to people, I am living proof that you can retire from a level 1 emergency department after 30 plus years. And I respected her and admired her. And I think that's why I've always done so much with emergency nursing. I just can't get enough of it, Yeah,
I'm same way.
It's crazy. It really is crazy. So that's how I started. I started out as a patient safety officer, and it was just so incredible. And then at the time, the emergency department that I had worked at was getting a brand new ED. And so there was little committees, and, at the time they had said, we have a lot of issues with restraints. And so I wasn't a nurse yet. And I helped put together the restraint policy, and I put together, a couple of other things in collaboration with others. And I was involved back then. And then when I graduated nursing school, I couldn't imagine myself anywhere else. So I only applied to the ED. And ironically, true story, I actually didn't get a job offer in the ED.
Ouch.
So right. But then there was apparently some miscommunication, and I was going to go work at another facility in a pediatric ED at the level 1. And the manager at the hospital that I was at said, I know that you didn't interview with me, and I think that there was some miscommunication, but do you still want to work in the ED? And I said, I can't imagine myself anywhere else. She says, the job is yours. Yeah.
How cool is that?
It was just a blessing, and
it was at the same ER where you were working?
Yeah.
Yeah. I did the same thing. I did the same thing at UNM. I went to school, and I started in the pediatric ER, like right across. Well, but then it wasn't across the hall. Then it was one little section of the ER that would get kind of carved out after 2 p.m. For the pediatric ER. So started in peds ER, and then floated back to the ER once I got a little experience under my belt. And then ran off, worked for the state for a little while, and then came back as a charge nurse. So,
I literally grew up in this ED. I went from everybody knowing me from this role to transitioning to a new grad. And then, 2 years later, I was the charge nurse. And then, it was just so, yeah.
How was the transition for you going from tech to nurse?
I think other people had an issue more than I did. I've always been a very assertive, very forward, very blunt individual. And so I think it was hard for people to realize that, my uniform has changed, you know what I mean? And for them to then see me as a nurse. A lot of the nurses that I worked with, were very proud. They really were. They were incredibly supportive. And they, again, pushed me and made me who I am. But it was hard for other people to see me in this different role. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to transition in the same place.
It felt fabulous. It really did. It was such a natural thing for me. I guess it's because I just couldn't imagine myself anywhere else. And I will tell you, and that's a true story, when I was told that I wasn't going to be able to work in the ED, I was devastated. And I said, you know what? Pediatrics, I love pediatrics. I'll go to the level 1. And I had a job offer there. And I had a couple of weeks left at the hospital, and I didn't plan on leaving. And, I got that phone call that literally changed my life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
I know.
How cool is that? And at what point were you sure you made the right choice?
There wasn't a doubt in my mind. There really wasn't. If I had gone, I really like to be diverse. And if I had gone to the pediatric emergency department, ED, I feel like I would have just been so specialized, because it really just was Peds ED.
Yep.
And I didn't want that. I loved pediatrics, but I really wanted both. I wanted to be kind of like that jack of all trades. I wanted that mix of everything. I wanted to know about, a little bit of cardiac when, the STEMI patients come in and your ICU patients that were boarding, but I also wanted a little bit of peds too. And I don't think I would have gotten that or been the nurse that I am today if I had just gone to the Peds ED.
Yeah. At what point did you decide you wanted to be a nurse?
So ironically, my family's from the Middle East. And so I've always kind of wanted to kind of go back, maybe do a lot of humanitarian work. Obviously, the world is full of war and full of trying times. And I always felt like I have a lot to offer. I have to figure out how I can make it in my career, do something so that I can always give back. And at the time, it was one of my last visits overseas to visit my family. And you can see the war-torn country. I mean, I remember my grandmother, God bless her, at the time before she passed away, she had terrible, terrible arthritis. And it's not like here, you just, you get a cab, you call an ambulance, you go to the hospital, just to go to a clinic where, maybe there's a physician there and it's almost like a one-room building, And so my poor grandmother would literally walk with her cane and wait in line outside. And that was literally my exposure to healthcare before I became a nurse. And I remember my mom, God bless her, she would say to me, she had worked at the hospital a long time before she had passed away. And she says, Jamla, I think that this is the best thing for you. And so
That's
I truly try to do as much as I possibly can, because my biggest fear in life is looking back and wondering, did I do enough? Did I make enough of a difference? And a lot of that just has to do with, my parents being immigrants and coming to the United States for a better life, but then also me going overseas and seeing what healthcare truly is.
Where were they from?
My parents are Palestinian.
Okay.
Yeah. So for me, it's very, it's also why I got involved in, the disaster teams. As a side note, I'll be completely honest and transparent. I actually applied for a lot of international humanitarian jobs, and I never got any of them.
Interesting.
Right. And I'm fluent in the languages, you know what I mean? And I always said to myself, okay, clearly God for me, whatever. I said, truly, whatever higher power there is, it wasn't meant to be. And I was really devastated. I actually was going to be a nurse practitioner, which was never my plan. But I really wanted to be a psych nurse practitioner and go overseas to those war-torn countries, because those kids that have, you know what I mean? They have that, how they grow up is not how I grew up here. And I'm truly blessed and fortunate. And I, even just being on deployments, we did a deployment to the border, just seeing those kids, they're so resilient, they're just, they either got picked up and then got brought right to us, or, they got picked up from one of the other camps and got right back to our base. And just watching these children, it's an incredible experience. It makes you think to yourself, why are you complaining about anything, Kevin? Like, why? And I say that to myself. I'm like, Jamla, my tea is a little cold, or it took extra, a little bit longer to get, but these kids, and so even to this day, I still think about doing it. And I think that, who knows what'll happen in the future, but that is a huge reason why I joined DMAT in the first place. And also why I'm now so excited to be a public health officer, because I truly feel that I can give back. I mean, maybe I wasn't meant to go overseas and live forever and work forever and give back there. Maybe it's here, but I don't know. I just feel like there's more that I can do before I leave this earth. And I just have to figure out how else to do it. And if it's by continuing to travel and spreading how much I love emergency nursing or whatever it is, I don't know. I really don't know, Kevin, but that is why I got into nursing in the first place.
That's cool.
I mean, I could see, it would take forever for and then the doctor would just close the door because he doesn't have any meds, Yeah. Or, you'd get the droppings from the military. The military would drop down, bags of, food, dried powder, milk, things like that. And that's what I remember. And I equate that to healthcare here in the United States. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about the diversity of all the places that I go to, puts it into different perspective.
Absolutely. And how long did you live there?
So I would spend summers there. Summers there. Yeah. Until it got to the point where it wasn't safe enough to go. And actually, it's heartbreaking as another side note. My last year there was 11 years ago, and I see what's going on in the world now. And it truly breaks my heart, because I'm like, I can't even go back. I have so much to offer and I can't even go back. And so that is why I'm so truly, truly passionate about emergency nursing. And people will say to you that I'm overly involved in things, overly involved for that reason, because I just feel like if I meet somebody here and we have a conversation about something, it'll spark them to do something else. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
In an indirect way, kind of giving back.
That's cool.
I met a young nurse in DC, and he made some comment. It was his first travel assignment, young Black male. And he went to get his picture taken for his badge. And he said, "I'm ready for my mugshot." And I looked at him and I said, "Don't you ever say that." And he looked at me and he's like, "Okay, mama." And I said, as a young Black male, you should be proud of this and don't ever say mugshot. And, we still keep in touch, and he's very young. He's very new in his career, but he's, going to join a critical care team. He now works at Hopkins in the ICU. He still reaches out to me and says, "I remember you pushing me to do this." And that is how I know that at least I'm doing something, or I did something where this man is going to go places. He is going to be such a role model. And one day somebody's going to do something because of him. And that's it.
That's cool. I love that. It's funny. It's like a candle. Your light touches the next one, touches the next one.
Yeah. And you don't even know. And honestly, you don't even know. And that's the beauty of it, is you don't have to know. I personally don't really care if I ever found out, but I'm just blessed to have people that say, "Oh, hey, I got my CEN. That person you recommended? Oh yeah, Pam Bartley. Did you reach out to her? Did you?" They said, "Yes, that's how I passed." And I'm brutally honest with people. I failed my CEN. I failed it twice. Not going to lie. Oh yeah. Oh, I failed it twice. And so people are like, "Well, why did you do it again?" I says, "You know what? I met this educator that somebody's like, just reach out." And I said, "All right, I'll do it." And I did. And by the grace of God, I studied her stuff and I passed. And I now send that to everybody else. I said, reach out to Jeff Solheim, reach out to Pam Bartley. I mean, these are great people. I think that's the beauty of nursing, is I've always wanted to be certified. It's actually funny. Years ago, I wanted to have all 5 certifications before now. And clearly that never happened. And it's just so funny, because it's not for lack of trying. I just unfortunately wasn't successful, and that's okay. And now I see so many people getting certified and have all 5. And I'm like, guys, where else can you get this unless you're an ED nurse,
Totally can.
I'm studying, but listen, I can't take a test to save my life. So Pam Bartley, whew, Lord.
So there's a doctor there at University Hospital that does hypnotism.
Okay.
For people for test anxiety. Like if you're like a test anxiety kind of person, he does hypnotism.
And it works.
And it works.
Yeah, so, if that was my problem, yeah. It's not the anxiety, it's the words on the page. Gotcha. Like get jumbled. Like if you were to ask me now, absolutely. I could, yes.
So yeah, I get it. I get it. Now, was English your first language?
So I learned English and Arabic at the same time.
Okay.
So my mom, God bless her, was actually a teacher overseas before she immigrated here. And then unfortunately at the time, she wasn't able to get her master's degrees transferred over here. But she actually was very adamant about education. And so she taught overseas. And so she was very adamant about teaching me Arabic and how to read it and write it when I was a kid.
It's hard.
It is hard. And now I forgot it.
Hard.
I know.
Arabic's hard. Now, the traditional headdress, has that ever been an issue for you with nursing? Do people give it a second thought, or have you been in places where it just didn't matter?
So, I'm really glad that you asked that. I will tell you that I didn't grow up wearing it.
Okay.
And I will tell you it's not for lack of wanting to wear it, especially because, like I said, I spent summers overseas, and then I never wore it over there, but my family over there wore it, and I would come back and I would want to wear it. And my parents at the time, they would say to me, "Jamla, it's not something that you can just put it on and take it off whenever you want." And so, I would put it on when I was younger, put it on for like a day. And it was so hard because people looked at me like, as if I had like pink hair at the time. You know what I mean? And I said to myself, now I know why my parents were so okay with me not wearing it until I was ready to put it on myself. And I will tell you, it wasn't until I was comfortable enough in my career that I actually put it on. And I put it on one day and I'm never taking it off. I constantly get told things. I had a guy at the ED the other day make a comment to me. Some random person asked me where the bathroom was, and I didn't hear him. And so I was like, "Oh, it's over here." And then I was like, "Oh, wait, I'm sorry. It's the other hallway." And he said to me, "Well, if you took off your burqa, maybe you'd see better." And I looked at him and I said, he's like, "Don't take it the wrong way. My wife was Jewish and she wore one, but she's weird." I said, sir, this isn't a burqa, but thank you. I have been in leadership positions where people will look me up and down and say, oh, well, you're not what I expected. Well, what did you expect? What did you expect?
Yeah. You're like, sorry to disappoint you, but here I am.
I'm sorry. Did you think I was different because I cover my hair? I don't get the difference. I really don't. And people that have known me for a long time will tell you that the only thing different is now I have scarves on my head. Yeah. And there is no difference.
What is it called?
So this is called a hijab.
I thought that was the case, but I wasn't sure.
Yep.
I wasn't positive.
Yep. And they will tell you.
Just wrong.
No, absolutely. And they will tell you that I am not changed in any other way. I was born Muslim and I have always been Muslim. People knew about it. The only difference in why people now have been shifted away is because now I actually look it. Whereas before, you knew I couldn't eat until the sun went down, right? And again, I've fasted during Ramadan, the holy month of Ramadan, as far back as I can remember. And you all knew that, but it wasn't until now I actually look it that now I'm different to you.
Yeah.
So I could tell you stories. I could tell you that I wish it was getting better, but I'm comfortable in it. And I'm also comfortable in myself. I'm a very, as I said, direct person. And I welcome anybody to have an adult conversation, but wearing it doesn't make me any less of a nurse at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I've very much been challenged by many individuals who will then look at me and say, oh, okay. Well, did you think that I was going to let that person be disrespectful just because I cover my hair? No, of course not. You wouldn't let that person speak to you that way, would you? Well, no. So what makes you think I will? I think there's a very big misconception. There really is. The other thing that I get a lot of is, oh, you must be the doctor. Yeah. That's so true. Come on.
Okay. So the only people I've seen at UNM ever wearing a hijab was the physicians that most of the time they came from someplace else.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
They weren't from New Mexico. They weren't, it wasn't that, it just wasn't that prominent there.
Correct.
As a matter of fact, I'll never forget, there was this resident who wore a hijab and she looked like she was 12 years old. She was so small and tiny. Yeah. And oh my gosh, and I remember her having a hard time with some of the patients because she was like, no, I'm the doctor, sir.
Yeah.
And she's this tall, and I'm like, be respectful of the doctor, sir.
Yeah. It's so the truth. And I think the other day, the other night that I worked and this individual made that comment, there was a male nurse and a female nurse. The male nurse was sitting and he, you could just see his eyes. And then the female nurse just stood there. And afterwards they said, I'm sorry, I should have said something. And I was like, why? It happens all the time.
Got it.
Yeah. I think they were both so shocked at what had transpired. They were so supportive. And for me, it's I appreciate it, but it's whatever, just brush off your shoulders. But for them, it was a big deal.
Yeah. This is me. That's the way it is.
Yeah. I hope that there's a lot of groups that I try to get engaged in on social media that are hijabi nurses and things like that, because you don't see a lot of them in the ED or national organizations as nurses. And it's a shame because I can still do my job and do CPR or work in an aircraft and put a helmet on or work in the back of a rig as a medic in practice wearing this. It doesn't interfere.
Yeah. So my first experience with anyone wearing kind of a headdress was Sikhs. So in Espanola, New Mexico, there's a huge Sikh community.
Okay.
So we had a few that worked down in the emergency department at the university, and I was like, what is this? This is I've not seen this. So then, as we met them and got to learn a little bit about what they do and who they are. And I was like,
oh yeah,
all right, whatever. That's cool.
I will tell you, and obviously this isn't public yet, but I'm running for National Board of Directors.
Good for you.
I'm very excited. And obviously that's not knowledge, I can't say anything yet, but I'm hoping that now that now you know, after listening to everything I've said, why I'm hoping that 1, I actually get to be a board member, but 2, more people will see me and then say, oh, I can do it too as a disabled individual or somebody who looks like me. You know what I mean?
So I'm sitting there. I was sitting here thinking to myself, I'm going, oh my God, she's going to be perfect when she runs for board. I was literally just sitting there thinking to myself. I was just sitting there thinking to myself, she's going to be so perfect when she's running for board. She's going to be perfect.
And obviously, DMAT, I will tell you that I have so much respect for the men and women that I've worked with over the past God knows how long on DMAT. And again, I never used to wear hijab being a DMATer. And for them, it was no difference at all. Like it's no difference. And I say that because I truly hope that, God willing, one day, if I don't make it on the board this year, the next time I run, that people see this. And then, when I get to be an actual officer for public health, PHS officer, that people see that. And that misconception of all Muslims are terrorists and all those other things. I'm a 100% Palestinian. And one of my greatest friends is as Jewish as they come from New York City. And he's a male, you know what I mean? And I want people to see that there's so much more than what you look like. Patty Coons-Howard came to one of our conferences in New York, and she was talking about diversity. Yeah, phenomenal woman. She's done an incredible job throughout her career. And she made some comment. We were having a conversation about diversity, and I was like, oh, my ears perked up. And I was like, I want to be a part of that committee. And so I was having a conversation with her, and she says, diversity is huge. And I says, yeah, but, there's a bunch of people here, and, there's not really a lot of people that look like me. And she says, that's it. I want to look out at a conference and see people that look like the patients that we serve on a consistent basis. That's what I want. I want to leave this earth one day knowing that I at least made some sort of difference, even if it's indirectly, and whether it's through, again, God willing, the board of directors, or whether it's through, public health service, just to give back. Because again, I wasn't able to give back in an international venue, you know what I mean? And when I say, I've applied for like World Health Organizations, you name it, I've done it. And I will tell you that maybe it's a blessing in disguise, because the last time I was able to actually go overseas, I was detained, I had my passport taken from me. And so now I just have to give back in a different way. And a lot of people don't know that about me, but that is one of the main reasons why I am so involved in things. It really is. That's it really cool. is.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Now you know my secret.
Now I know your secret.
Yeah, but you know what though? Even if like I said, and as much as I want to, even if I don't make it, I'm still okay with it, because I still look like I do and put myself out there. So even then somebody else, you know what I mean?
Hell yes.
That's the whole point.
Oh yeah. If nothing else, if all you're doing is laying the foundation for someone else to go a little further, done.
Yep. So. And I want to be on the board, but even if I don't, I would still be okay, because I tried, and then I'm praying that inspires somebody else to do something, Yep. And then at the end of the day, if I never get to be on the board, but I know that somebody else is on the board and they are a diverse individual who has a lot to offer, I'm at peace with that. You know what I mean? Like that is indirectly being able to say, I've served that mission. What else can I do before I leave this earth?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think there's something to be said for that.
I'm trying, my friend. I'm trying.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad we connected.
Me too. Awesome. I appreciate you reaching out. Thank you very much.
No problem. Well, look, definitely keep in touch.
Yes.
Let me know how things are going.
I will.
I can't wait. And boy, I can't wait till you
hopefully a couple
make
weeks.
some announcements.
Hopefully in a couple weeks. Hopefully.
That's exciting.
I'll let you know.
That's super exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I almost forgot. I wanted to make one more mention. I mentioned in the episode how important I think it is to vote for your national officers for ENA. So if you're an ENA member, don't forget to vote. I think now is about the time when this is going to be released. So make sure you do that. There are an incredible amount of amazing candidates who want to serve you as a board member. Make sure to take a look and see who you like, and go out there and vote. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Art of Emergency Nursing podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Facebook.